Hello and welcome to the Cutie Art Crusaders, episode 117 for October 7th, 2014. My name is Rainbow Plasma, I'm the organizer and this week's editor of the podcast, and today I'm joined by...
Burn1, the special guest coordinator, and this week not the editor.
I'm Flutterguy317, and I am the media manager for the podcast, and I will most likely be editing soon. Hopefully.
You keep saying that,
I know.
But until the day that you actually do it...
I can start editing now, because my weekends are free. So.
One day, my student.
Okay.
Senpai will teach you.
Cool. Yeah, we'll teach you at some point.
Yeah.
So, again, Mr. Joel, Mr. Atmospark, is not with us this week. He's back from his convention adventures, but he is currently asleep because I believe it is about 5 a.m. where he is, and yeah, we're gonna leave his con adventures until next week when we can do a big extravaganza.
I'm actually really excited to hear about that because he met a lot of really cool people.
Yeah,
got
he
a lot
did.
of really cool stuff. So
yeah, it seems like he had a really good time. You know, despite the con like crashing and salvage con having to happen, it sounded like it actually came together quite nice, and it ended up being a really cool trip, minus the long drive to get there, of course.
yeah, because I think was like 3 hours. Well, we'll ask him next week. But...
Yeah, we'll ask him next week. So Bernd, you had a little thing that you did today that I wanted to talk about.
Did I know?
Apparently, I'm not recognizable enough to you. I'm not important enough in your life for you to remember my Skype name. So what was that all about? I kind of missed it because I wasn't here.
So for your information, I had only slept for like 5 hours to wake up early for the podcast.
So the usual.
And what ended up happening was I was just trying to add you to the Skype call, and I was just being considerate, and I typed in your name, and I just typed in your real name. I just typed in Max. And when you type in Max to Skype, Rainbow Plasma doesn't exactly come up. So I ended up calling someone completely random. Not my fault, because your name does happen to be Max. Thank you very much.
Fortunately, he didn't actually pick up, so it wasn't like...
So you just called some random person on your Skype. Who is this? Who is that person?
I actually don't know.
Just some random Max.
Just some random Max. So today, we're all playing the role of Max. I'm Maximo Plasma.
I'm Max01.
I'm Maxer Guy?
No. Actually, I like that better. I was going to say Max317, but yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Shut up, Max01. So, speaking of other people, we should probably get down to what we're doing this week, which is a fantastic interview, don't we? Can I start that sentence again? Because that was kind of dumb. I'm not even going to edit it out. I just want to do it again, just for practice.
Go ahead.
That sentence was dumb.
We've only been doing this for, 2.5 years now?
Shut up. So we have a fantastic interview today, don't we, Bernd?
We do. Almost as fantastic as my tea. So this
Or
week
your
on the
face.
podcast, we have two lovely guests. So two guests, which is a bit out of the usual. This week on the podcast, we have the Paper Pony Pair. So thank you both for joining us. I believe Amber and Brian.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
It is lovely to have you on the podcast. We got to meet you at BronyCon, and when we talked to you there, you were both fantastic in person, so we're excited to have you on the show and join us and talk about the many, many, many paper things that you guys have cut out.
The many folds
Yes.
of paper.
Yeah. So before we get started, there's a question that we always ask our guests on there. For anyone who doesn't know who you are, basically, could you describe who you are and what you do?
Amber, you want to take this one?
Sure. We actually cut out paper and we layer it into a shadow box so it pops up and it's like 3D art.
Okay, cool. So you make a physical, actual item that people can commission and purchase, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's really cool. I actually have one of your shadow boxes, and so basically, I guess you could describe it as like 2.5D, kind of.
Yeah, it's kind of a faux 3D. It's all two-dimensional images, but we just pop up individual parts of it to give it the illusion or give it depth without it actually being a sculpture.
Right. So I guess just to give a little bit more detail, for someone who might has no idea what a shadow box is. Like for example, myself before this BronyCon, I had never really heard of them before and didn't really know about them. I think I'd seen a couple before, but if you were to describe to someone who's never seen one before we show them a picture of it, how would you describe it?
Shadow boxes are deep set frames. Most photo frames are enough to put a picture in. A shadow box is actually intended to hold objects. Most people actually put trinkets and like baby boots and other memorabilia and keepsakes that are too big to put in a regular frame.
Hugs.
So what we do with ours, yeah, exactly. So what we do with ours is we use that extra space to lift up the layers on the paper art to create the kind of 3D illustrations. Anything we make is actually based on original artwork at some point, so anything can be interpreted to be layered into it.
Yeah, that's really cool. So like, what's your process basically from going from this? Because I see on your gallery you have a lot of these mock-ups, I guess, which I'm assuming is like the original art.
Yes.
How do you go from that basically to a 3D representation of it?
Well, I guess a precursor question to that before you answer that question. How do you just make the first step, like your the thing that you base that next step off of the what do you want? The Illustrator mockup.
Okay. Everything that we make actually starts as a sketch, just a regular drawing, just like anything else. So when we're going to draw something, we just get a regular image, and I can post a link as an example here shortly. But we don't really put a lot of thought into like this sketch is intended to be a shadow box as much as it is just this is a sketch that we are going to convert into a shadow box. So from the drawing, I'll take that drawing into Illustrator and start creating vector shapes. And the only thing that I have to do differently from a regular piece of art is I have to think about the parts of it that are not seen, because there has to be enough slack, enough extra space to put glue and the adhesive spacer dots to actually hold the entire structure together. But that's really the only difference between them. And then after that, we just assign colors. And then when we're ready to cut them, we just pull the colors apart and group them.
Cool. So do you like use the different layers in Illustrator to kind of separate out the layers in the shadow box? Or
well, yeah, everything in Illustrator is automatically layered. Like every new shape you creates its own individual layer. So you can select those shapes and then change the order. Like you can bring it up or push it down. And so long as everything stacks in Illustrator in a logical way that doesn't have any weird overlaps or any like conflicts, then we know that box, when we go to cut it, will be possible to assemble.
I didn't really think about it like that. I knew you made the precursor images in Illustrator, but I didn't really think that you could use or think how you use the layering in Illustrator to actually use the layering of paper. It seems obvious.
It provides a very reliable, kind of a test build. Because if I can build it digitally and everything kind of jives and makes sense, then when I actually go to physically put it together, then the same will also be true.
Right, and it allows us to pull the pieces off so that, when we're building it, we can see where each piece goes on top of the next one.
Now, also, for, I guess, some watching may not know this, but the digital mockup that you make in Illustrator, you actually use that digitally to make the cutouts, correct? Mm-hmm. So I believe you have a fancy way of getting your Illustrator picture to paper world, if you will.
Yes, we actually have a die cutting machine called a Silhouette Cameo. It's a machine that can cut on 12 by 12 cardstock. And essentially, you would lay your paper onto a sticky mat. You lay your shapes into the software on a grid that corresponds to the same mat, and you press cut, and it runs the mat through, and it has a blade that's on a bearing that changes direction based on what direction the mat is getting pushed and pulled, and it will cut all of your shapes for you in exactly how you have them laid out.
And you just switch with the colors, so every color corresponds. You lay a new color on and press start.
Cool. So you just linked a shadow box cutout of Fluttershy, and it's kind of all the different pieces like splayed across.
Yep.
So do you kind of take your drawing in Illustrator and then like for each color you kind of splay them across, or do you cut each individual part like one at a time?
If we're looking at the little cutouts one that I sent you, like all the yellows, for instance, we would pull all those, group them together, and then we'd lay them out on the grid, and according to what paper is available to cut on. And we press cut, and it'll cut all the yellows. We pull them off the sheet, and then we switch it out with the pink, and then we'll lay all the pink pieces on, including our cutie mark and our hair, and we'll do the same thing. And then we just cut it out, color by color.
Yeah, that's cool. Do you guys create any shadow boxes like cutouts by hand before you got the machine to do it? Or?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, the first box we ever finished was completely hand cut. In fact, the first 10 boxes we did were hand cut. It was actually Amber's idea to find the cutting machine. She bought it for me for my birthday. I had no idea these things even existed until then, and that's kind of when we started taking off as far as going to conventions, because hand cutting them, it would have taken us all year to make 30 boxes or so to bring to BronyCon. It just wouldn't have been enough.
Yeah, I'd imagine that it takes a lot longer to cut it by hand. And yeah. I'm guessing you kind of have to. Did you have to overlay trace paper, I guess, to cut it out, or did you trace it on the cardstock, or before the machine?
Yeah. What we did when I was hand cutting this is I would draw it in Photoshop, much the same way how I use Illustrator now, except that what I would do there is, after separating the pieces, much like how you see, I would actually flip the entire image horizontally so that it would reverse it. And then I would flip the paper horizontally, and I would, and this is really high tech, I would hold the paper up to the monitor and trace it lightly with a pencil.
Wow.
And
nice.
Get all of my shapes on there. And then, of course, once I have my faint outline, I'll just take an X-Acto knife to it and cut out the shapes. It took a long, long time, but it was a similar process to what we do now with the machine.
Yeah, it sounds really intensive. I mean, you talked about the fact that it was a great birthday present, but I'm sure that Amber's got just as much mileage out of that present, and it was a huge motivator for her probably to get it in the first place.
Yeah, well, I mean, essentially he would disappear for 12 hours in a day and come back with one little shadow box, and he's like, "Here, look what I did." And I'm like, "That's really cool, but that was 12 hours."
Yeah.
BRB, I have to go cut paper.
Right, and it would have made glitter that we use a lot of now. It would have made that impossible because the paper is so thick that he couldn't have really traced it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about those materials that you were just mentioning there. So what are the type of typical materials that you go through, and do you have any kind of special materials? You mentioned that there was some glitter in there as well. Is that a different type of paper, or?
Well, cardstock comes in a bunch of different types. There's a bunch of different brands. For instance, Basil is what I would consider the best brand. It's got the brightest colors. The paper just holds up really well. It's got a nice texture to it. And they make their own glitter stock, which is the glitter stuff you see. They also make mirror board, which we use a lot of in our designs. And that's the stuff that's shiny and it looks like mirrors. So if you look at any of our Celestias or our Lunas, their shoes will always be made out of mirror board. We have dabbled in rhinestones we started using. And we also have, the foam adhesive tabs. We use American Craft for that. And rubber cement is really important to the process. He actually started out with glue, but that stained the paper.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right. And I'd imagine you might have some problems with, longevity of that as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have a certain color we use for Twilight. It's, I lost it, Wild Pansy, and that paper stains like crazy. So I've lost so many Twilight faces to, the glue opening up when I'm trying
no.
to transport it.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
So when I got the Applejack Shadowbox at BronyCon, I kind of asked you a bit about them there, and it was interesting to see kind of how it was put together, because you mentioned the foam tabs, and it's basically you guys just put stacks of the foam tabs together to kind of offset the layers. I guess, is that correct? Basically.
Yeah, that's essentially it. When we're building something, we'll usually try and decide what's going to go on top of the other one, and we'll use stacks. So sometimes we'll have to do like a double stack, like if we're going to put them down, and that's just taking 2 tabs and sticking them together.
Yeah, because you also kind of went through how rigid it is, because I was like, oh, be careful with it, and you're like, oh no, the art's fine, and like kind of shook it around a bit, and I'm like, a little bit, but because you guys, I guess, use a lot of like anchor points, or kind of where the tabs are placed, like in good locations, I guess.
Yeah, we try to do okay, so what we did for you was like our shake test. We do that we do that intentionally to scare people, because there's a lot of fear with paper, and it's like, oh, it's paper, it must be very brittle. But like cardstock is very, very sturdy. It's acid free, so it doesn't fade. And yeah, just like I said, we use a lot of anchor points to keep everything like stable. So yeah, what we typically do when we're finishing up a box is like we're putting stacks and stacks under this thing to get the character mounted into the final frame, and we just do little tap tests, and we just like kind of poke it around, and if we feel any parts that are particularly loose or kind of sag, then we just put another stack of dots under it, just to prop it up and make sure it's held. And then of course, whenever people are concerned about it, we'll just take their box and just shake it in front of them and be like, hey, see, it holds up just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we always say the glass on the boxes is what's going to break more than our art. That's more likely to break.
Okay, so case in point, we were unloading for BronyCon, okay, and we had a lot of frames and everything laid out, and of course we weren't terribly organized, so we had to lay everything on the ground first. And one of our frames had actually gotten stepped on.
Oh no!
Like put a foot right through the glass, right, like dead center. So of course the frame was fine, was toast. It was just completely shattered. But by the time we had brushed the glass and everything off of it, the artwork was still perfectly fine.
So you just needed a new frame to stick it in.
We put it in a new frame, and you could not tell that Rainbow Dash had just been stepped on.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
So
it's probably got some additional sparkles in there from the broken glass.
Yeah, maybe don't shake it around too much. Right? Well, that's really cool, but it does make sense. I mean, people might look at it, and because from the front, you can't see those kind of anchor points, so it just looks like it's floating almost like it's being hung somewhere, and so it looks very fragile. But when you turn it a bit and you can see the anchor points, it's quite rooted in there, and that's really cool, because I'm of personal opinion that art should be well loved, I guess. Like all of my posters on my wall, like, yeah, they could have sticky stuff on the back that's going to ruin them, but I don't even have frames in them. Like, I just like them, have them on my wall. I like to, I actually have a shadow box. It's not one of yours. It's someone else's. It's someone else's shadow box of Rainbow Dash. I've got that right there in my desk, and yeah, it'll get bumped around and something might happen. But I think art should be well loved, and so it's cool that you guys can make something that might have something happen to it, and it won't ruin it.
Yeah. Well, it has to be durable.
Yeah. But that's the thing about art, is like a lot of the time it's not durable. A lot of the time you have to be quite careful with it. And while that's cool and all, I think it's really cool to have this aspect of like you can really do a lot of stuff to this and you'll still have a great piece of art.
Oh yeah, people have been telling us too, like, oh, my picture fell off the wall, and where do I get a new frame? And the artwork is always okay. So.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's super cool.
It's also something that you brought up, Max. Just it's nice that if you're looking at it straight on too, you can't really see any of those anchor points. So it's like it really does look like just a 2-dimensional art. But if you turn sideways or whatever, you can kind of get the 3D effect. But you don't see any of like the backing until you actually really turn to the side, which is cool.
Yeah.
If we do it right. Sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes the pieces that were popping up are so thin, we actually take the tabs and we cut them in half because like we need it to be particularly tiny, but we still want that element to be popped up. So sometimes we actually do
Yeah.
have to trim the tabs themselves to be able to fit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine sometimes, you get something with quite a bit of depth that it doesn't take much turning to see them, but I don't think it takes away from it too much, if at all.
It's always kind of fun too because some of our bigger, like really complex frames, if you look at them from the side, it just looks like this city of just white dots just stacked everywhere. And it's so like it's just an entirely different piece of art when you look at it from the side.
Yeah. Because
Right,
just looking through your gallery, you have a lot of variation in the style. Like you have a lot of simpler frames, and then you can get very complex.
Yeah.
Is the process or the time that it takes very different between those? Yeah.
The process doesn't change. The time taken varies wildly.
I mean, there's some simple ones like the little fillies, like you probably just like the eyes and stuff is the most complex part, but some of them, I mean, like when at BronyCon, you had one in particular, it was of Nightmare Moon, and pun intended, like it looked like a nightmare to make. It was so complex. It had everything in it, like it had like little ponies in like a jail cell. There was all this crazy stuff going on. Like I had oh my goodness, the amount of time must have went into that. Like I remember mentioning it, and you guys were just like, "Pff."
Yeah.
we don't talk about that box. No, actually, a friend of ours last year had commissioned a box based on Project Horizons, which is part of Fallout Equestria. I'm not sure if you guys read a lot of fanfics, but his thing is he really tries so hard to challenge us in the worst possible ways. So this year it was the Past Sins cover that was commissioned by the writer of Past Sins, and that shadow box was based on the original artwork that was recomped for paper, and then of course vector traced just like anything else that we make. And yeah, this thing had about 750 pieces in it.
Wow.
It took about 28 hours to assemble.
And the funny thing about that box is it's got the smallest pony we've ever built in it, and then the largest.
Nice.
Yeah, so we built a little tiny Nyx, and she was like the size of a thumbnail. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like,
Yeah, I can see her there.
as soon as I cut her out, I had to build her because I was going to lose the pieces if I didn't. So
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then, of course, we have this gargantuan Nightmare Moon bust, like for the whole like left half of the frame.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
I'd imagine working on a smaller scale is probably a lot more complicated than some of the larger ponies. Like Nyx probably was impossible to put together. Or
Well, yeah, and I have fat fingers too, so it's like I was literally using two X-Acto blades because like the tips make very nice like almost like tweezers, but they're kind of just tiny manipulators that you can use. And I swear, if somebody was watching me do this, it was like I was doing surgery because like I had one knife holding one down, and I had another knife like gluing the tiny piece down, and
At least you didn't have to do it like ship in the box style. Like you didn't have the frame already. You had to go around the side and put it in like it's a ship in a bottle.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't understand how people do that. That's amazing.
yeah,
And then like they pull the string at the end, and like the whole thing just props up. It's like,
yeah.
What?
Yeah. So let's take a step back here for a second and talk about how you got started doing all this. So what kind of drew you to doing shadow boxes, and what got both of you to start?
Well, Amber, this was your responsibility.
Well, yeah, we were trying to figure out a good Christmas gift for one of our friends, and she is the one that actually introduced Brian into My Little Pony. So I figured, let's do something artsy for My Little Pony, and her favorite was Fluttershy. And I was like, do you think you could do like a diorama? And I was thinking something silly, like, how in school you used to do like those shoebox dioramas and it'd have like string, and I had no idea what he was going to come up with, but he kind of was like, yeah, I'll try it. And he came out like 12 hours later with this like piece of cut paper, and it was like popped up, and I'm like, wow, Brian, that's really cool. And we took it around. It did the rounds for Christmas, and we showed our family members, and they were like, not even fans of My Little Pony, but they're like, how did you do this? This is so cool. And we kind of realized that, we could maybe try our hands at more of these. So I don't know, Brian, you want to tell them maybe how you got the idea?
Sure. Okay, so I had actually, just a couple of days prior to this, had actually seen some My Little Pony paper cut artwork from an artist named Hatpire, and he or she, does little shadow boxes of paper cut art, and ranging from like Doctor Who to Adventure Time and a few other things. And it's kind of where when Amber kind of gave me the idea to do like a diorama type thing, that was the first thing my mind went to. So trying to reverse engineer like how these things were built, took a trip out to Michael's and pretty much just went up and down all the different aisles and just tried to find what materials would accomplish this. And I originally thought construction paper, but the colors on construction paper are just horrible. It's all these like really gaudy greens and reds and blues, and it's very thin and nasty. And I didn't even know that like cardstock paper existed in like the full spectrum that it does until I rounded that corner and just saw a wall which literally looked like paint swatches from Photoshop. So that was the ray of light. I was like, okay, here's the stuff I want to use. So it just kind of started from there. And then the rest of it was just, figuring out, like, how am I going to get this drawing into paper? And that's where I came up with that whole, like, tracing on my monitor method, which I don't recommend to anyone, by the way. Don't put sharp objects to your monitor. But that was our best alternative there at the time.
Is this the first one that you did? Is that the one that you...
Yes, it was the little sleepy Fluttershy. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's adorable. Also, I love in the description it says, "I might make more of these in the future."
Love it.
So
2012.
Yeah.
Well, that was almost 2 years ago, huh?
Yeah. That was like pre-Thanksgiving 2012.
And you know what? She still holds up today. Our friend still has it, and she's on the wall.
Oh,
it's traveled to Canada and back. So yeah,
that's awesome. It's quite the journey you guys have made within the last 2 years. It's amazing how fast everything can go. From doing that 2 years ago to how many you're doing nowadays, and how complex they are.
And we owe a lot of that, almost all of that, to the brony community too, because this community has been very, very supportive and so like passionate,
enthusiastic,
about the work we do, and it's fantastic because up until this point, like, we kind of just live in obscurity, and like nobody really knows or cares about what we do, and like this is all kind of new to us, that like people actually want to see what we're up to and all that. Like, it's kind of unusual, and like we owe all of that to the brony community, and it's been amazing.
And the thing I love about this art form particularly is that it's really easy to share. So like we can get other artists to draw for us, and we can take their style and put it into a paper box, and I think that's really cool.
I mean, you did something similar to that for BronyCon, didn't you?
We did.
Good segue.
So, do you want to tell us a little bit about that? I mean, we know the story. We were there at BronyCon with the whole auction and stuff like that. But why don't you regale it for the people who are listening?
Well, we had actually been talking about it for a while, that we wanted to do a really unique main six set, and we thought it'd be really cool to find people that had different styles, and we kind of ended up approaching 6 different community artists and gave them choice on who they wanted for the main 6, and they had free range. We didn't give them, the only thing we told them is it has to be in a 12 by 12 frame. You have to use your character, and then we kind of let them go from there, and they just came back with these amazing sketches, and Brian was able to vector them, and then we built them.
Cool. So you had, who did you have? Who were the 6 artists?
Oh yeah, we had Leakfish, who did Pinkie Pie. We had Kat Whitney, who did Twilight. We had, help me out, Brian.
John Haseko did Rainbow Dash.
Right.
Pixel
Sophie
Kitties did Rarity.
Sophie Cobra did Applejack.
And then shout out to Jada Jinx.
Jada Jinx did Fluttershy.
We don't talk about her.
We don't talk about that Fluttershy.
She's like, give me a shout out on this, and I was like, oh, I'll give you a shout out. You won't like it.
We might have to edit that out.
I definitely. Oh no, none of that. I definitely heard that you were pretty cross with her for, let's just say, the challenge in finger quotes that she provided you with.
Oh yeah, yeah. I worked on her box. We actually did one for the charity auction and then one for the artist. And her box literally took me 2 full days of building
Wow.
with Fluttershy's complex hair. And actually, we're going to be doing something like this again for next year for BronyCon again, and then Everfree. And we've gotten 10 artists, and she's one of them. Again, because we hate ourselves. And we actually
have a little sit-down chat with her.
I know. Well, we told them, we're like, challenge us, because these are charity auction pieces. We're not going to be making a lot of them, so we might as well make the best and prettiest art that we can from them. And she actually gave us, she's doing cadence, and she gave us a sketch. We have it if you want to see it, and it might even be more challenging.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Yeah.
Sure, we'd love to
please.
if you have it on hand.
My favorite part about the Fluttershy piece, I don't know if it was in her design or if you decided to do it as original bit, but there's like little roses, I think, in the piece, or like 3-dimensional little flowers that you like built. And that looks awesome, like, because everything is kind of like that flat 2-dimensional that has like the faux like 3D, like how it just pops up and creates that layer. But like having also the little like rose thing thrown in there just like adds like a whole nother little dimension.
Yeah, the paper flowers, we had actually taken a trip to Hobby Lobby, like not even a few weeks, or not even like a few days before we built it. And, this is when we started picking up rhinestones and all that, because we just saw all these little flare things that we could get, and we saw these little packs of paper flowers. And it's like, well, Fluttershy has a lot of flowers, so like I originally bought them being lazy, because like, hey, now I don't have to build all those flowers. But no, it turned out that they were a little bit too big to use for some of the smaller ones in the frame, so we still used the ones that were vectored, but then we just kind of threw those in as little extras at the end, and they seemed to blend right in with the composition. It didn't stick out too much, so we kept them because like I think it added a pretty lovely touch to it.
Oh yeah, it kind of adds to the whole 3D nature of it.
Yeah,
because they kind of stick out a bit more, but it's subtle, so it's really nice.
And we
Definitely
actually used the
favorite little bit.
We used the same type of flowers too, because we did a 19 or like a 20 by 20 frame of a roseluck portrait, and we put the same flowers in there because the whole bottom half of the frame is like a big rose bed.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
So like they're kind of dotted in. They're hard to see because like they don't really stick out, but it does help fill in those little gaps.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Looking at this cadence by Jada Jinx. Good luck.
Yeah.
We wish
That
you luck
is- Oh man.
in your health and sanity.
Yeah, all we see is glitter and crystals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet. So, I mean, just looking at this piece in particular, to use it as a kind of example, the artists themselves don't really give a huge amount of depth cues.
Mm-hmm.
So is this something that you would do then in Illustrator to kind of put in those shadows to get a sense of where all the pieces are going to go in terms of 3D space?
Yeah, whenever I'm making a mock-up, the little drop shadows and everything I add are actually just a courtesy for the whoever's commissioning the piece. Just because like I know what parts are going to be popped up and what's going to be layered and roughly what it's going to look like when it's finished, but if somebody had commissioned this piece and they don't know what this box is going to look like when it's complete, I just add those drop shadows in just to be like, hey, this is where these pieces are going to be raised. And I try to delete those shadows for the pieces that are going to be glued, and it just kind of helps give a rough idea as to what it's going to look like when it's completed.
Okay. That's cool.
Yep.
So it's not really something that you do for yourself. It's more like for people seeing it before it's finished.
Yeah.
You can kind of,
Exactly. Because, I mean, typically with our commissions process, like once the mock-up is finished, that's when the payments due. We don't actually begin construction on it until it's paid for. So in that light, I try to give them as much of a visual cue as possible. Like, hey, this is what your box is going to look like. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Like I said, it's kind of a courtesy. It's not even necessary for the mock-up.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's nice of you to do too, anyways, because I'm sure some people might have a hard time seeing that kind of depth in the same way that you do. Being so experienced doing this kind of stuff, you might see it in a different way. For example, looking at cadence, I can kind of tell some of them, but I'm sure you'd be able to look at that immediately and go, "Oh yeah, that goes there and there and there." Whereas I have to definitely think about it for a while.
And there's another like decision factor that has to be made too, in the fact that these frames have a limited amount of depth in them. So if we have things stacked too high, and we run into this problem with rarity all the time, if things are stacked too high, then what happens is, they'll press against the bottom of the glass when you go to put them in the frame, and then you can get this weird, deformation happening on the artwork. So that's another thing that we have to be very conscious of.
Do you guys have different size boxes? I mean, I know you have like different width and height boxes, because at BronyCon we saw you had these 2 massive boxes.
Yeah.
But like, is there any variation in the depth, or is it all basically a set depth of a box?
Our 12 by 12 frames are 1 inch deep. Our 11 by 14s, 5 by 7s, 8 by 10s, and 8 by 8s are all 3/4 inch deep.
Which means 8 tab stacks for the 12 by 12s and 6 tab stacks for the others that he mentioned.
The others, yep.
Yeah.
The big frames that you saw at BronyCon are actually 2 inches deep. And
wow.
That means that we can get stacks up to 16 tabs high, which is just more space than we typically ever need. So yeah, those are very very spacious, and the downside to that is that you can use an enormous amount of dots on them. And
yeah, I can imagine.
these dots come in packs of like 270, which sounds like a lot, but considering that we probably used well over 2,500 dots on the on the past sends box alone, like you can see how they go pretty quick.
Yeah, I imagine they would go like crazy. So yeah, it was really cool getting to see the kind of stuff that you did in terms of the BronyCon charity stuff. I know we put our hat in to try and get those, but it went a bit too high for us. But it was really nice seeing people. As always with the charity stuff, it's really awesome seeing people who can come out and kind of donate to charity with this stuff. And it was really nice of you guys to put up these shadow boxes, because I know sitting there in the charity auction, people loved them. People looked at them and immediately went, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
Yeah, they were definitely the ticket item of the entire auction.
Yeah. We do take a lot of pride in that too, because it's like, instead of just like throwing a piece that we've already made, because if it's nothing special, then we don't feel like anybody should bid on it more than what its market value is. Like I can't really justify that. But if it's something that's one of a kind that will never be made again, it was made specifically for this, then I think mentally that's a lot easier to run the bids up on, because it's something that will never be made again.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that carries a lot of weight.
Yeah, and we're going to be doing that again this year too. For BronyCon, we're going to be doing the princesses, so that cadence will be part of it, and of course it'll be one of a kind again for the set. And then for Everfree, we're going to be doing villains. So we've got 6 other people doing villains as well.
Okay,
cool.
And you've also got this stained glass set as well that you've linked.
Yeah, Brian.
Amber?
Okay. Sure, it's me. So we try and keep like the stuff that we bring to conventions fresh, because we want people to keep coming back. So we had a stained glass Celestia and a stained glass Luna that we did, and we kind of wanted to carry on the trend. So these are, first, we haven't shown them to anybody, but they're brand new stained glass main 6.
They look awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you have linked 2 of them to us.
Yeah.
So I'm sure I'll get the 6. I'm sure I'll get the 6 of them. But yeah. So on the screen right now we've got Twilight, Rarity, Rainbow Dash, Pinky, Fluttershy, Applejack. So yeah, these are brand new. These are hot off the presses, I hear.
Yep. In fact, we just took these photos this morning, so they haven't even really been properly photographed yet up until now.
Wow. I know you kind of hinted at was it this Rarity on Twitter or something?
Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was a beast. She's always the hardest to build.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is it because of her hair?
Yeah.
Yeah. God, Rarity. Why you gotta be like that?
That
Rarity.
depth to her hair, though, was pretty fantastic.
More like Harity. Am I right?
Speaking of illumination. Yeah, I'm really impressed with the Rainbow Dash one, just because of the really cool cape.
Yes.
I've never seen that before, and I'm not sure if it's based off of something or it's just something that you guys kind of came up with, but it looks great.
We wanted to just do some kind of dress design for them that wasn't their gala dresses, because those, like, we've kind of overdone those for the first half of our I want to say career, as paper artists. So, we moved on from those to the power ponies, and then we went to these stained glass designs, and we wanted to add something to it because, like, where the princesses have, like, these big glittery manes and tails and everything to fill up those bottom parts of the frame, like, we needed a dress or something to, add to these for the main six. And, like, these dress designs are, very simple, but they were just something that we added to kind of help, put in some more visual interest.
Yeah. It's interesting that you guys have kind of like a series, I guess, is it per year? Because, like, this year was the power ponies, last year was the gala dresses, and then next year will be this kind of stained glass kind of thing.
Yeah, up until we get bored of them, that is.
Yeah.
and then we're like, hey, we need another set for the main six. And
the
that
truth
kind of depends.
is, there are only so many times you can make one box before you're like, I need to make art.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah.
That's understandable.
When it starts to feel like a production line, then it's like, okay, we should probably do something different.
Well,
Yeah.
it's funny because the room we work in is really hot. We live, in Florida with the heat. So we call it our pony sweatshop in there because there's like barely any AC.
Oh,
jeez.
my little sweatshop.
Exactly.
Hey, now we got quotas to meet.
I love how colorful all of these things are, though. I mean, we've been looking at a bunch, and there's been a ton of images on screen for everyone at home. But every single one of these is so incredibly colorful and out there, and I love it because I'm a person who really enjoys these bold color choices. Is that something that kind of comes into your mind when you're making these? Like, for example, the Applejack one has got like so many different colors, and you chose like teal for the background, which really pops.
A lot of that is just kind of guess and check. I have a very hard time actually coordinating colors when I'm making these, but you kind of pick a corner and start with it, and we have like a set of base colors for Applejack. Like, we know that her mane and tail is going to be made from pollen, a color called pollen. Her body is made out of mango, and like we kind of use those as like a starting point, and then we just start adding variation to it. And then as far as like coordinating like teals and greens, it's basically just I'm sitting at the computer like clicking different color swatches and asking Amber's like, hey, how about this one? How about this one? Do you like this or do you like this? One or two?
And the creators are very nice too, because I don't know if you've ever noticed, but their eye color in general always looks really good as a background. So that's kind of what we always try to base it off of, because it always complements the other colors.
Nice.
Oh yeah, I can see what you mean in some of these.
Yeah. So like Fluttershy's mostly over teal colors, Applejack's mostly over greens, Rarity looks good over blues, Rainbow Dash looks good over rose color. So it's a good starting point for sure.
Cool. That's awesome.
Didn't even notice that, but that's really cool. I'm looking back at the BronyCon auction pieces, and you can see that on basically everyone except for Twilight. But
Twilight's hard to pick colors for because like she's purples and blue, and if you put her over purple, then she fades in. If you put her over anything else, then she clashes. So it's hard to find good colors for her for a background.
And color's funny anyway, because as soon as you put it over another color, it brings out the certain colors. So like if you put Twilight over a gray, her body turns very gray, even in purple.
Right, yeah.
Interesting.
It's really amazing how color works. But you're right, Twilight does. It's funny. You either have to go like all purple all the time and make it that is like the theme, or you have to think of something different. But it's kind of difficult for her because she doesn't have too many kind of stand out. She has that one shade in her hair, that kind of like lighter pink.
Yeah.
And you can kind of work with that a little bit, but.
Yeah,
it's funny too. I think the hardest type of color to find is actually Rarity's mane and tail color, because it is this weird mix of like purple and blue, and it's not quite one or the other. And so like you can find purple paper that is like really purple, and then you'll find like blue paper that's really blue, but it's hard to find like an even mishmash of the two.
Well, then I imagine for like the curls, there's probably different shades of that color that you have to use to layer it on.
Yeah, and there's like an upper shade and a lower shade, and if we decide to vary it even further than that, which we've been doing a lot more lately. I think our most recent Cadence piece is a good example of this, because I think her wings actually have 4 different tones on them.
Wow.
which is something that we up until then hadn't really done too often. We actually did it by accident one time with the Luna, and we're like, hey, that looks kind of cool, so let's do that some more. Because we grabbed two blues that looked similar, but they weren't the same.
Is there anything else that like you kind of are looking forward to trying in future shadow boxes that you put together? Like I know before we started recording, you were asking me because I lined my shadow box with some LED strips, and you were asking me about that. But is there anything like maybe color wise or material wise or whatever that you would like to try in the future?
Well, see, the lighting thing was kind of a big deal for us because like that's really cool. That adds a whole different like. It's a shadow box that makes its own shadows. So, like, how cool is that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably the primary thing.
And possibly moving. We've done one moving shadow box. It was the Marauders map, and we made the feet move.
Huh.
So like,
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's really difficult to do, and it's kind of unstable right now. But that's something I think we'd like to try a little more.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
How would you go about that? Like,
Brian.
So what we did with this. Okay, this is a long story. So sit tight. Amber's idea first off to make the Marauders map, and I was like, all right, cool. So there's this image of the Marauders map. That's like the like stylized Hogwarts, but no, she wanted to have the feet in it moving around. So essentially, what we did is we went out to Walmart and we found a motion lamp. I think it was like a Cars 2 lamp or whatever. It's one of those lamps that turns slowly. So we bought that for like $10. Took it home, smashed it open, took the motor out, and plugged the motor in. Essentially glued a CD to it and cut a circular disc using the machine here. And on that disc, I had actually drawn up a pattern of black squares, out of just a black permanent marker. Put that, propped it underneath the base layer of the entire shadow box. So there is a layer that has just a disc on it. And then in the base layer of the box, I had actually cut out little hollows for the feet. And so when I turned the motor on, it would actually turn, and the black squares would show through the holes. And it was done in such a way that, they looked like quick little footsteps, just running circles around the Hogwarts design.
oh, okay.
It was a real pain in the butt, though, because things were a bit unstable. Like the CD thing kept falling a little bit, or like it was destabilized and it would jam, and it took a long time to actually get it to work properly. And probably not something I'm going to do often until we can streamline it a bit more. But
yeah,
that was certainly the first of its kind and the only of its kind at the moment.
Yeah, I bet. Like you said before, this shadow box just in the 2D standstill wasn't really viable until you could get a good system going. So I guess if you wanted to push further with that, you'd have to get something else that'll help you along the way.
Yeah. We had actually looked briefly into like electroluminescent wire as well, because if for instance we were doing Celestia and we wanted to like put wire highlights or trims in her hair to make her hair literally glow, that's something else that I'd love to be able to do, but at this point it's just a matter of time to kind of research and develop it.
Yeah, that's
got to do a bit of experimentation.
Yeah.
There was a plushie that was put out a month ago or whatever. The Luna with EL wire in it. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
I know. I first tried with using EL wire in my shadow box, but it wasn't really bright enough to kind of create the shadows or like make it pop. But like as accents, it would be really cool in like hair and whatnot. Definitely would be neat to see.
Yeah. And that might be one of those things where if our convention circuit slows down a little bit and we find ourselves with some more free time, then that's something we'll certainly pursue because, that's the way forward. That's how you make progress,
Yeah. The future.
Exactly. The shadow box is up tomorrow.
Speaking of conventions, there was one thing I wanted to bring up. At, I think it was Everfree Northwest, you did a little paper shadow box workshop, which was fantastic. I remember stepping into that when you were about halfway through it and everyone was building their little ponies, and everyone loved it. And I guess it was more just wanted to thank you for doing that. It was a great thing to do at the convention, like for the community and for people who love seeing your work.
Thank you. Yeah, those are a lot of fun to do. We did I think we did the classes at Nightmare Nights, BabsCon, and BronyCon so far.
Mhm.
I think the ones that we've been at.
Okay, then it was BabsCon. I saw
Yeah,
it.
it had to have been BabsCon. Yeah, those are fun. I learned a lot about myself doing those classes, and that I don't handle groups so well, but Amber's fantastic at it. So
Well, there you go. She'll be the teacher.
Yeah. And the thing that I really like about it is I know at BronyCon we had this table, and it had, a father and a daughter, it had a mother and a son, and her son was autistic, and then it had just another guy that was sitting there. And by the end of the class, not only were they all talking and laughing, but they are talking on Twitter all the time, and they're like, "Oh, next year at BronyCon, we're gonna meet up at their class again, and we'll walk around." So it built like a bond with them, and it was really neat.
Aw.
That's cool.
That's
That's
amazing.
awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of
Great
a unintended success story, but it's always nice to hear. Like these people, ended up forging a friendship in our class. Like that was really cool.
Yeah.
I really love hearing things like that, and you hear that stuff like that in the community all the time.
Oh,
It's
I know.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Mhm. That's one of the best parts of it all. We're
sure.
going to be doing another
For sure.
class for Nightmare
Nightmare
Nights
Night.
coming up in a few weeks, and that's going to
That's
be
awesome.
fun.
Well, I know people. If you're heading out to Nightmare Nights, you'll definitely have to go and check that out. It seems like a really fun thing to learn.
Fills up quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, every time we've had to turn people away. So
Oh,
Oh, that's too bad. That's too bad. So I mean, let's talk a little bit about your other stuff than pony stuff really quickly. I know we are a pony podcast, but you seem to be branching out a little bit, at least recently, working in things like anywhere from anime to things like animated movies, like How to Train Your Dragon, to gaming things like League of Legends. So
Avatar.
you seem to be branching out a bit.
oh yes, the League of Legends thing kind of happened all of a sudden. Somebody had asked for a shadowbox of the Champion Rumble and the Super Galaxy skin. For those who play the game will know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
And we put that up on the League of Legends subreddit, and it kind of blew up, and we got a lot of requests. Now we have a list of League of Legends champions to do, and
It's awesome.
we'll be seeing
That's
a lot more
amazing.
of those soon.
yeah.
I really, really like the Lee Sin one. It's fantastic. Just like kind of art style too, for like all the intricate stuff in the background. It's really, really awesome.
That was my entire yesterday.
It looks very complex.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw some pictures of that like disassembled on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it's crazy. And every time, because we have I think we're doing 2 non-pony cons this year, and every time we're about to do them, we start doing non-pony stuff, and we're like, oh yeah, we're gonna do some non-pony stuff, and it's gonna be awesome. And then once we're done with the stock, we're like, where's the pony stuff? It's sometimes so much easier. We're comfortable.
Yeah, that's true. I guess the art style is a little bit more translatable with MLP.
Yeah, it takes a lot less work to do like a Fluttershy than it would take to convert like a 3D model or an intricate painting into a shadow box.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And
Yeah,
also,
I
we're
bet.
just
I bet.
familiar with the shapes at this point now too. So like Brian can draw ponies a lot better than he can draw, people sometimes. And I know exactly what, a pony face is going to look like. So it's really easy for me to build without a reference.
Right.
But then we
people,
had Lee Sin, like just all this paper green confetti laid out, and we're like, wow, none of these shapes make any sense on their own.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of piece it back together.
But again, that's where the mock-up is useful too, because we can have
Right.
put the Illustrator file in. Again, they're all layered the way they should be arranged on the paper. So,
Right.
we can pick and pull, and to figure out like what's supposed to go where.
Yeah, so
Right,
you can
right,
kind of
yeah.
scroll through the layers and figure out like positioning and whatnot.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. So, I mean, what's up and coming for you guys? I mean, you showed off today your new stuff there with the main 6. But other than that, which should be coming out soon, I'm assuming. What other stuff are you looking forward to in the future? You talked a little bit about Nightmare Nights as the con coming up, right? But just in general with your art and shadow boxes, what can people look forward to?
You got the list.
Oh, I have the list. Okay. No, you have the list too.
Yeah.
Well, like we mentioned, we're going to be doing the 2 charity auction with the villain set. So we always love converting other people's art into shadow boxes. So we've got a lot of the same people coming back. Pixel Kitties is going to be doing Trixie, of course.
Right.
As it should be.
And Kat Whitney is going to be doing Chrysalis, and
I heard Saoshin's going to be doing Luna.
yes.
Oh my
Looking forward to
goodness.
That is going to be, yeah.
Yeah.
I will be bidding on that then.
And I don't
Get
even know how to
excited.
pronounce his name. Viersparter? Maybe?
Oh,
Rastaper.
Yeah,
yeah.
you got it then. He's going to be doing Celestia, and they've already done a combined piece together that we actually have on our wall. So I think
Big wing hype.
Yeah.
so I think they're going to be really good because he'll be Celestia and then Sayoshin will be Luna. So I think they're going to coordinate well.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we're going to be doing a lot more How to Train Your Dragon for MegaCon, which I'm super excited about because that's my favorite thing.
Toothless is the best.
Have you ever considered selling non-pony, like How to Train Your Dragon stuff at a pony convention?
Oh yeah.
Oh, we did.
Oh, you did this at BronyCon, or
Yes.
No.
Yeah,
I
we
must have
had
missed it.
we had
We
like
must have missed it,
four those little baby toothless.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so we only sold them on Sunday because we brought the kits with us, so they weren't actually assembled when we got to the convention. But we
I
had
see.
we had an extra table space by Sunday, so we had actually just brought the kits out and started building them. Of course, people were looking over, seeing what's going on, like they're actually building them there, and we're like, "Oh yeah, we're building this toothless. He's for sale when he's ready." And like, I'll buy it now. So they did, and this repeated itself until we ran out.
Wow.
So
So they,
That's awesome.
They barely even made it up on display then.
no,
You
they,
did
they they never made it to the display. They were
Really?
just on the table.
wow,
Like,
that's why
sorry,
I
it's
missed it
sold.
then.
Wow, lucky ducks.
Yeah.
And that's actually
Wow.
that's how it's been with Toothless though, because we brought the same kit, the same one to Metricon, and under the same circumstances, we didn't have time to build it before we got there. And of course, we started building it at the table, and the same thing happened there too. So it was just kind of
Right.
like,
right.
wow, we need to build more Toothless apparently.
Mhm.
And of course, lately we've gotten into anime too, so we'll be doing like Sword Art Online, Attack on Titan soon. We're going to be doing some Full Metal Alchemist coming up.
Ooh, yes.
Would you ever do a Trigun box?
We
Gosh.
haven't watched it. Have you
Oh,
watched
you
it?
haven't watched it, Amber. You haven't
Okay.
watched it.
Alright.
How dare you?
Excuse me.
My bad.
Yeah. Well, that's really great to hear. It sounds like you guys have got a lot of projects up and coming, and you guys have planned quite far ahead. So you got quite the work on your plate.
Mhm.
Yep.
You have our work cut out for us.
I wish we did. It
Uh,
makes things so much easier.
Wow, wow.
Except it's
well,
not cut yet.
on that note, on that awful pun, I think we're gonna have to start wrapping this up soon with a few minutes left. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you guys so much for coming on the show. It was really great to see you guys at BronyCon, and it was really awesome learning a little bit more about what you guys do and the process that goes into these fantastic physical art pieces.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate
Yeah.
you guys, taking the time to record with us too, because that was, it's very, we very much appreciate it, and you guys come by to and talk to us and all that. There was really great meeting you at BronyCon as well, and probably won't be the last time we see each other, honestly.
Yeah.
yeah, definitely
Yeah,
not.
absolutely. I mean, we're all going back to BronyCon next year, so hope to see you there then.
Oh, we'll
yeah,
be there.
as long as we're there. As long as we get
Yay.
in, Brian.
Yeah, as long as we get in. Yes.
I'm pretty sure that if you guys didn't get in, that the entire convention would just melt down.
Yeah,
and,
there'd be riots.
We'll
Yeah.
just set up.
I mean-
We'll set up a booth next to the ice cold water guy.
Yes.
Hell yes.
Oh my god, can you make a shadow box of that guy?
Just give
We
it to
could
him.
give it to him.
Maybe,
tell me
maybe.
about it.
Like, you are definitely really popular within the fandom, but it's because the fandom responds well to creativity and just quality too, which was something I wanted to mention, because all of your shadow boxes are just like fantastic, and you wouldn't be as amazingly popular as you are without just like how awesome each one of your boxes and your artwork that you actually make like done digitally and then cut it out. Like, it's your work is fantastic. So
Thank you,
I just
thank
want
you.
to compliment you for that.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
We consider ourselves very lucky too, and it's a very fortunate place to be.
Well, hard work does pay off in the end. So
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say.
All right, so we do have to wrap up because we are kind of running out on time. I'm very much running out of time. So before we do our plugs, is there any place that you would like to plug for your stuff? I know you guys have a DeviantArt, which is the-paper-pony.deviantart.com. I think you have an Etsy store too.
Yeah.
Do you want to just run through where people can find you?
Yeah, our Etsy shop is called The Paper Pony Place, all one word. And we are also on Twitter at The Paper Pony, and also our DeviantArt page. Those are our main rounds online.
And also, hi, Samantha, Jada Jinx. Hello. You are awesome, even though I kid with you. I promise, guys.
So on the note, if anyone is interested in some of these fantastic shadow boxes, head to that Etsy store.
Or a convention.
What is the best place to commission you at? Would it be through the Etsy store?
Yeah, Etsy, direct email, notes on DeviantArt. We check everything, so. Or even if you want to do Twitter, that's fine too. We check it all.
Cool. All right, so we're going to do our plugs now. You can find us on DeviantArt, which is cutieartcrusaders.deviantart.com. We have a YouTube page, which is youtube.com/cutieartcrusaders. We have a Twitter, which is @cutieartcrusade, Facebook, which is cutieartcrusaders on Facebook, and we have an email, which is cutieartcrusaders@gmail.com. Send us questions, stuff like that.
It's pretty much Cutie Art Crusaders with everything except for Twitter.
Yeah.
It's too long.
Just what is it? Two letters. Too long.
Letters.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is everything from us this week. Again, just one last final thank you to both Amber and Brian for coming out today. It was a pleasure having you.
Yeah,
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Awesome. And so without further ado, next week we have Joel back, Mr. Atmospark, who will be talking about his convention experience at SalvageCon 2014. And so look forward to that. I don't know what else we're going to be doing, but it should just be a typical episode with a little bit of Australian spice.
Ooh.
So look forward to
So
that.
That sounds like an episode name right there.
will the video be basically upside down then, or?
Jokes.
All right. Well, without further ado, we're going to wrap this thing up. So my name is Rainbow Plasma.
My name's Burned01.
I'm Flutterguy317.
And
The Paper Pony.
Mrs. Paper Pony.
Yay! Mrs. Paper Pony. All right. We'll see you guys next week.
All right.
Bye.